this some radical new therapy?
Oh, well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me.
Live.
Yeah.
Live and on time.
Oh, yeah. Right on time.
How often does that happen?
We're getting there.
Although the live time is going to change. It is going to... And we're working on the molding thing in the back, trust me. I'm getting complaints.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I belong to this Facebook group called Podcasters on Facebook.
Oh, yes. I am too.
And most of the people there are assholes.
Really? They've always been very nice.
Yeah, nobody's treating me very nice at all.
Well, it's because it's you, Tom.
So we went from another studio to this studio, and we're still trying to... Oh, what happened? So we went from another studio to this studio, and we're still kind of working on it. Some stuck-up guy on Facebook, I think from Australia, was like, "Oh, look at that background! Can't you do a better job?" Like, dude, if people tune into this show for the optics, they came to the wrong place.
I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, say it.
He lives in Australia. Like he has
Right.
better things to worry about.
Right. We're about getting a gun to protect yourself.
Watch out with
They
the
took
kangaroos.
everybody's guns. They took everybody's guns in Australia.
Really?
Actually, I was watching an Australian video on TikTok, was it? I think yesterday, about somebody that got arrested for posting something on Facebook, and I was like, oh, man, Western society is just so doomed. See if we can get some Bapapas out today.
Let's do it.
If we can.
Drink some water, please. You ready?
I'm ready. Bap. No,
I almost got it.
I got 2 bars out, and that was it. Well, it shows I'm getting better, though.
You're getting better.
2 weeks
I'm
ago,
proud.
I couldn't even do that.
I'm really proud of you.
All right, let's see if we can get this show on the road. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Doug. Today with the Paying Attention podcast. High atop Main Street, North Andover. High atop Golden Seal Apothecary. What's an apothecary, you might ask? It's actually an old-style name for a pharmacy. When I was growing up, way back when they invented fire, actually they didn't invent fire. When they discovered fire, I don't know what Debo going. He said someone invented fire. But way back when I was growing up, that's what a pharmacy was. It was an apothecary. That's what they called it. And then, of course, they changed it to pharmacy for some reason. I don't know why. And, in fact, there was a Packard apothecary on South Union Street when I was growing up. And it had one of those old-style fountains with a soda bar. So you could go in and order like a cream soda while you were waiting for your prescriptions.
But was it like a can or an
No.
actual cup?
It was like a blender and everything, and they made you like an ice cream float. You get root beer with ice cream in it, and you get a frap. You can get.
People are living way too long nowadays.
Yeah, you could order a sandwich. It was great while you're waiting for your prescriptions.
I feel like people are living too long nowadays.
Well,
back in the day, people didn't live that long, so we didn't know as much from the past. Now we know too much.
Right.
Too much information, I think.
Well, it's funny. There's a lot of information out there, but people are dumber today because when I was for example, when I was growing up, you had to know someone's phone number.
Yeah.
Right. So there was no cell phone. We had pay phones. Right. So if you wanted to call someone, you had to know their number. Mm-hmm. So now my friend, I have a friend that I hang out with every day. Right. And we were doing something online, and I said, I need your phone number. She goes, you don't know my phone number?
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, well, no, because we program someone's name in the phone now, and then we tell Siri to call that person. So we're not dialing it every time, so you don't remember. So I still remember my phone number when I was a kid. Now, I want to tell you how old I am before we get into today's show. When I was a kid, like a little kid, like when I was 4 and 5, okay? So I lived downstairs from my grandmother on Boxford Street in Lawrence. My grandmother's phone number upstairs, there was no 978, and there was no 68. Her number was 20321, and that was it. 20321 was my grandmother's phone number. So as a 4-year-old kid, I could go to the phone and do 20321, and it would ring upstairs to my grandmother's house.
Okay. Was it like a special code because she was right upstairs?
No. There was no zip code.
So it was just 5 numbers?
That was it, because we didn't have not that many people had phones.
Got it. Probability grew.
So if you had a family, there was one phone in the house. So even if there was 10 people in your family, there was still only one phone. Now if you have 10 people in a family, everybody's got their own phone.
Oh, yeah.
You got 10 phones, right?
Phone, tablet, laptop, everybody, yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah.
So
stick to the future. Let's stick to the present, please.
Back then you had to know stuff is my point. And today you don't have to know anything because you know you can look it up any minute. So there's no need for me to learn that. I can just look it up when I need it.
No, yes you do, because you have to learn how to use a phone.
Well, that's true.
That
Yeah,
brain space is now being used towards technology. It's
Right.
something else. I'm
Right.
telling
Okay.
you.
All right. Fair. Fine.
All right,
fair
let's thank
enough.
our
All right,
sponsors.
All right. We'll do that, and then we'll stop popping and cracking here on Debo, Dimebag Debo, and Crybaby Kelly. I've really been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now. All right. Then we're going to thank our sponsors, Century 21 McLennan Real Estate. I haven't heard from Matt yet, but I'm hoping we can get him to the Bash this year. He's a lot of fun.
Really?
Yeah, Matt McLennan. Everybody thinks that. Like, I think he's like maybe a little younger than me, but I think 'cause people think he's a little older. That he's not like the party guy. And this is a guy that's been to more concerts than I've ever been to in
Does
my
he
life.
dance?
I don't know, but I could see that happening.
Well, I like to dance. So are we gonna dance at the Bash?
I don't know if there's going to be dancing. There isn't really a dance floor. However, at the end of the night, when people start leaving, this is a woman thing, not a guy thing. Women will move the tables off the dance floor and just start dancing.
Okay.
Right. So like grocery girl and your intern girl.
Yeah,
so
I'm
all the
definitely gonna
girls
dance.
will make room but every year I get the same thing. Is there going to be dancing in advance? Is there going to be dancing? So every year, Rick Belanti, who's our DJ that works for us for free every year for our charity bash, will say, all right, look, if they're bugging you about dancing, what I'll do is we'll do a little bit of dancing beforehand, and then we'll do some dancing at the end. And every single year, without exception, by the time we get to dancing, they're gone. The people that bugged me about it is they're going to be dancing. They're either in the bar drinking or they're at some other event or whatever. Or they're at the hotel waiting for us to get there for the after party. But they're not there to dance. So the people who complain about there's no dancing are never the people there to dance when it's time to dance. So we're not accommodating you ladies. And it's never a guy. I've never once had a guy, maybe Jonathan Guzman, but that doesn't count, right? I've never had a guy say, is there going to be dancing after during the bash? She's rolling on the floor laughing. No, that doesn't count. Come on. Even he would admit that doesn't count.
He is a great dancer. I've danced
He's
with
a
him
phenomenal
before.
dancer.
He's an amazing dancer.
And he donated $100 to our...
no way.
Yeah.
Oh, he's such a great guy.
So he's one of 4 elected officials in Lawrence that's kicked in for our scholarships.
That's cool. Can't wait to see him in the future.
Not to shame Giovanni Rodriguez or any of the others that haven't yet kicked in. But
how about Gregory? Has he done anything?
Gregory hasn't, but he's coming, so I know he will.
Okay.
I know he will.
Good.
Gregory's a good guy, by the way.
He is a very good guy.
And the more Debo and Kelly hate on him, the more I like him.
Me too.
Yeah,
me
right.
too. Me too.
All right, Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, the Zany Pesci Law Office, Marsan and Son Construction, EIS, Investigation and Gun Training. We're cutting them. Tomo and Shaken Seafood. We haven't done Tomo yet.
You owe me Tomo.
I do owe you
You
Tomo.
owe me Tomo. You owe me Sefmar.
Sevmar, yep.
And you owe me, well, I don't want to say because they don't pay for a sponsor, but another spot where they sell steak.
You can say it if you want.
Across the street from Two Guys Smoke Shop.
Oh, T-Bones.
Yeah,
Yep. AFC Urgent Care, Clear Path for Veterans New England, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors. I was hanging out with him, Dave Idconsoli, yesterday. So I had a meeting yesterday with Zaka from AFC Urgent Care because he donated $4,000 to the scholarships, $4,000. He's our highest donor this year so far. And we had lunch like we do periodically, and Dave Idconsoli knew I was going to be there for lunch, so he showed up with some checks, and he donated $300 for our scholarships.
What a great guy.
And so while the three of us are sitting there and I'm introducing them, Mike Agricola comes over, the owner of Salvatore's. So he sits down, and I'm like, this is a meeting of the minds. None of these people knew each other before I sat down, like before I put them together. And one of the things that I really like a lot is being able to bring people who normally their path wouldn't cross and bring them together and get them to do business together. So while we're sitting there, Dave Idconsoli from Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors says to Zaka from AFC Urgent Care, hey, I've been trying to get with you guys to have my immigration physicals and for physicals for employment for all my employees. Mm-hmm. And Zaka was like, oh, well, we'd love to do that. And then the next thing I know,
networking,
which is good because I can concentrate on eating my food.
And they network.
And they can network and they can chit-chat. And then, of course, Mike Agricola is there. So now all of a sudden, Dave wants to have his reunion at Salvatore's. So they're talking about doing business. And I sat there thinking, this is like a little mini bash. So those of you who are wondering what is the bash, that's what the bash is. It's all of our advertisers, our readers, our supporters in the community, viewers of the show, people who follow us on Facebook, people who are our writers, our delivery drivers, everybody kind of getting together and doing business together. Like I remember, I think it was probably 10 years ago now. I remember I was up on stage one night at the bash and I looked out And Joe Zingales, who was our real estate guy, is having a conversation with Jim Sarcione, our mortgage guy. Now, what better? I mean, two people that do business together, but a real estate guy and a mortgage guy. And I looked out and I was like, wow, look at that. Those two guys are going to do great business together. And I think they made a ton of money on each other doing business together.
Wow.
And it was because they met at our bash. So
Nice.
it's a great networking opportunity, which, by the way, is the reason all the elected officials show up.
Oh, of course.
Because, first of all, they know we're going to fill the room with like 500 people. And then, secondly, they see who the caliber of people are that are there.
Yeah.
Right? They're business owners, they're movers and shakers, people that fund campaigns, lobbyists, people that are people who are the movers and shakers
It's
in
a
the
good
community.
place to get some exposure.
I'd love to get Socrates de la Cruz there one day because he does a bash similar to ours.
Okay.
And it seems like if we're doing the same thing, we ought to be taking notes from each other and working together, but I'm Mr. Networking. All right, what else do we have left? Prime Insurance, the Doug Mercurio Law Office. We'll get through this list eventually. Chris's Barbershop. I have to go get my hair cut before the bash.
Please.
And get him his tickets because he's a big supporter of ours. Enterprise Bank, W3ON. W3ON, that's Dave DiNatale. He does my website. So anytime there's a problem with the Valley Patriot website, I don't even have to call him anymore. I shoot a quick email to support@w3on.com, and in like an hour, my thing is done, and I'll have an email or a text back going, how is it now? And it's usually great.
The way you want it.
4-Star Lighting, it's actually a free shout-out to 4-Star Lighting. Another free shout-out to JG's Ice Cream. And my good friend Paul Lambert, who, and I don't have the number in front of me, but donated a ton of money to our scholarships again this year. So thank you to Paul Lambert. And who else do we have? And Wally at Harrow's Pies. We want to say hi to Wally at Harrow's Pies.
Sounds good.
All right, so that's it. Thanks for coming. That's the end of the show, folks. Good night.
All right, bye.
All right, so what are we going to talk about first? Well, first we're going to do this. What's poppin'? What's crackin'? What's crackin'? What's poppin'?
Yo,
boy, we're with the homies, yo.
What's cooking, bro?
What's good? What's good? What's good? Oh, boy. Well, so if you haven't followed this stuff, and I had someone come over to me at Team F last night and said, I didn't really follow it all, but I saw that last story that you posted, and it made me want to go back and read all the previous stories that were linked at the bottom because I couldn't believe when I read the story that you wrote, I went, holy crap, that's an unbelievable story. So I went back to the beginning to when you got arrested and then when they did the original filing, and he's like, and I don't know. Who the hell do these people think they are? And I was like, well, tune into my show tomorrow. I'm going to tell you who they think they are. So in case you haven't learned, in case you haven't been really following me, we had a First Amendment case before the New Hampshire Supreme Court that 2 weeks ago, Friday, on February 28th, we got our ruling, unanimous ruling. There she is right there at the bottom of the screen. There's crybaby Kelly Frazier from Salem, New Hampshire, by the way. She doesn't even live in Lawrence. While she's with the homies. So we had our First Amendment case before the New Hampshire Supreme Court. It was a 3-judge panel, and it was a unanimous decision in our favor. So here's basically what happened. I'm going to give you the basics, and if you've read my story, this is probably going to be a rerun for you, but I'm going to add some details that aren't there, and we're going to make it a little bit more fun. So in February of let me give you a better timeline so that you'll understand how all of this evolved. So in
February? No.
Well, I want to go back a little bit further. I want to go back to in July of
23.
In July of 2023, I got a phone call. It was middle of the night, probably maybe around 10 o'clock. Got a phone call from somebody in Lawrence City Hall that said, put the TV on. And, of course, I don't have cable access for Lawrence, so I went on the internet and I pulled up the Lawrence City Council meeting, and there is Octavian Spanner, Special Assistant to the Mayor of Lawrence, standing at a City Council meeting talking about federal ARPA grants that are going to be dispersed to nonprofits throughout the community. And so what a federal ARPA grant is, during COVID, Joe Biden and his administration and the Congress allocated billions of dollars to go to you and I and to businesses to help us with COVID. And they had anticipated COVID lasting a little longer than it did. Or I should say, they were anticipating the American public to be fooled by the COVID lockdowns a little longer than they were.
Okay.
And so when we came out of COVID, around 2021, the end of 2021, the Biden administration took all of that leftover money and they decided to disperse it to local nonprofits throughout the country who do good works in the community. And they call it the American Rescue Plan. So it's all the leftover COVID money, they turned it into the American Rescue Plan called ARPA, ARPA, and they allocated these grants to communities like Lawrence and communities like Lowell and Worcester and Springfield, Ohio, throughout the country, mostly cities. Some towns did get some. They got a little bit, but it was just crumbs. Mostly it went to the cities. Why? Because cities vote Democrat. Right? Cities vote Democrat, so there's always
you think that's why?
Yeah,
you
there's
think
always
there was a good intention behind it. Don't you
no,
think they really
no,
care?
I don't think anything politicians do has.
You
a
don't
good
think the
intention behind it.
politicians
No.
that live in gated communities and stuff, you don't think they really care about us?
No. Do you think Adrienne Ramos, who lives up in $1 million home off I think she's off Salem Street or Foster Street in North Andover, you think she really cares about the little brown people that are living on Park and Hampshire Street getting shot at tomorrow night?
Oh my God, no. How about those places on Broadway where they live above stores and it's full of rats and piss and stuff?
Right,
I don't care.
and roaches, right?
Oh,
so they put together the American Rescue Plan mostly for cities, and so the city of Lawrence got, I don't want to guess the number, but it was probably somewhere around $3 million, I think, for the American Rescue Plan.
Which is not a lot of money. Sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot.
It's personal money, but it's not really a lot.
So what the city did is the city put out a call for grant applications. So if you're a nonprofit throughout the community, you could submit an application and say, my nonprofit is the I Love Tom Duggan nonprofit, and we want to spread love to Tom Duggan, and we're applying for a $100,000 grant so we can make banners that say we love Tom Duggan.
I'm going to start that.
Right?
Actually.
Wouldn't that be great? Right? That little Saturday morning group is kind of
You got to
cute.
go to the barbershop first. And
right.
Take some pictures and stuff.
I was actually thinking of opening a barbershop and not cut hair.
And do what?
In Lawrence. Nobody gets their hair cut anyway. They're all just sitting around a barbershop every time I drive by.
Drinking beers.
Why have it? Just put the music on, right? Put on either Shakira in Spanish or Grupo Mania, which is my favorite. I still listen to Grupo
like
Mania.
them.
I love Grupo Mania.
Oh, they don't listen to that stuff.
It's old school. Anyways, where were we?
You were going back to the grants, the $3 million.
Right. So different nonprofits throughout the community would apply in Lawrence would apply to the city of Lawrence for a grant and would have to explain why they want the grant, what they're going to do with the money. And the dirty little secret about all this is when communities like Lawrence, all communities, but especially communities like Lawrence, give a grant to the I Love Tom Duggan nonprofit, they never follow up and say, how did you spend the money? So it's a grift, okay? It is for local community mayors to give free money to the nonprofits that secretly support them. And this is not a dig on Brian DePena. This is a dig on every mayor in the country. These community development grants that come through the cities, most of them are grifts so that elected politicians can thank the people that hold signs for them at election time.
That makes perfect
Most
sense.
of those people also are part of a nonprofit, but the nonprofit can't support them.
It's just politics.
But the people who work at the nonprofit are all out holding signs for the guy. Okay? So that's basically how it works. So I get the phone call, Octavian Spanners before the city council, and they're talking about ARPA grants. You guys are all good on what an ARPA grant is? Okay. So I'm watching, and he says we have to take 2 names off this list because there's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Oh, well, that was pretty interesting. So I'm thinking, whose name do they want to take off the list? So I did come in the middle of this. I know I didn't see the whole thing. So when it was over, I called City Hall and said, I called the city council's office and said, I need to know who the 2 names are that got taken off the list, and why is it a conflict of interest? Because that's pretty interesting. Like if you're a reporter, you hear conflict of interest, that's usually sending up red flags that this is a story. So I spoke to somebody in the city council office, it might have even been a city councilor, who gave me the 2 names, and they said there are 2 city employees who applied for these grants, but they can't get them because the grant that goes to their nonprofit goes to their nonprofit basically mirrors what they do for their job. Okay. So, for example, and I'm not picking on Lynette Perez. I know when I see her now, she won't even say hi to me because she's mad because she doesn't want me to bring this up.
Oh, wow.
But one of the people is Lynette Perez, who is the domestic violence coordinator for the city of Lawrence. She started, supposedly, a nonprofit for domestic violence victims. The ARPA grant for domestic violence victims has to go through her office.
Oh. Okay.
So it's a conflict of interest for her to apply to herself to get
and I'm sure she had good intentions in all of that, because that type of work, it's,
It turned out the paperwork on the nonprofit was not right, and the nonprofit wasn't legal at the moment she applied, so they had to take her name off the list. The other person on that list was Kelly Birchall Frazier, who lives in Salem, New Hampshire, in a lily white neighborhood on General Pulaski Drive, a home that I drove by a few times over the last couple of days, because it's soon going to be the new Valley Patriot headquarters when I take them to civil court.
Oh, okay.
Right, so I wanted to get a lid of what kind of house it was, and I'm picturing in my head like what kind of drapes I want to put in the windows.
Okay.
And so.
Does it look good? Like, is it good, like landscaping and stuff too?
I wasn't really impressed, but I could do something with it.
Is it a cul-de-sac or no?
It's no.
No, okay.
So I get the two names, and I started thinking Lynette Perez was Brian DePina's campaign manager.
Okay.
That's probably a bigger story. Okay. Now, if I just wanted to hate on crybaby Kelly Birchall, I would have just written a story about Kelly Birchall. But I wasn't looking to hate on anybody. I have a job to do. Mm-hmm. Just like if I was a cop and I pulled you over for drunk driving, even if you're my mom, I have to arrest you. It's my job. It's what I have to do. So I've always liked Lynette Perez, and I'm going to say this 9 more times, and she still won't say hi to me, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've always liked Lynette. I got along with her very well during the campaign. Even when she was doing her ridiculous Black Lives Matter crap, shitting all over the Lawrence cops. It's amazing now that she's actually working in the Lawrence police station with Lawrence cops. But I didn't see that as hypocrisy. I saw that as growth. Okay. Like she's learned, right? She's gotten a little older. She's getting smarter, and she realizes the cops aren't the bad guys. But she's a domestic violence coordinator for the city of Lawrence who applied for a grant to do domestic violence for her nonprofit that does strangely the same thing that she does in her job. Okay. Now, even if she had the most pure of intentions, we've seen this. If you're in the news business or you're in the politics business, we see this all the time in every community. You'll have a city employee that will start a nonprofit that does what they do in their job. And what many of them try to do, and I'm not saying Lynette was trying to do this, but what many of them try to do, and what makes this news, besides the conflict of interest aspect, is that let's say I have a nonprofit to paint homes for
veterans.
For veterans. Okay, so I have a nonprofit to paint homes for veterans, and I'm the city coordinator for painting homes for veterans. Okay, and I applied to myself to get a grant to paint homes for veterans. So
on the side.
So now while I'm getting paid by the city, I'm going to a veteran's home and I'm assessing their home to be painted. Mm-hmm. But then when I go back to my office, I fill out all the paperwork, I Xerox them and I bring them home, and I use that paperwork for my nonprofit to apply to the city for a grant to get paid twice for the work I'm doing once.
Got it.
Okay, so that's the grift that a lot of city employees do. And again, I'm not saying that Lynette did this, but when I learned that there was Kelly Frazier and Lynette Perez that were on this list for conflict of interest, applying for grants that they probably shouldn't be getting, my radar went up. And what solidified for me that it was a story was that Lynette was Brian's campaign manager. So I said, even though Brian's my friend and I love Brian to death, it's
you have a job.
It's a really bad look to have your campaign manager applying for a grant that goes through her office for a nonprofit that she runs that's identical to the job we're paying her for. So I thought that was more of a public interest. Now, all these people like Julissa Nunez that run around saying, he's a mouthpiece for the administration. Look at all the ads they buy. Do you think Brian DePina was happy that I put his goddaughter, Lynette Perez, who was his campaign manager, on the front page of the paper?
I just think you need to stop answering to those people. They're just
you're right.
Clickbait. Don't even bother about it.
You're right.
So back to the Lynette Perez.
So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, so in July of 2023, Lynette Perez was the front page of my paper.
Okay.
And it was about the conflict of interest and the fact that her nonprofit didn't quite exist when she applied for the money. Okay. And that there was some hanky-panky with her application. We'll just leave it that way. Okay. Because whether it's a mistake or it's not a mistake, it doesn't matter. The information was still wrong. So I wrote that story, and my intention was to write the Kelly Frazier story. So that was for August. So that was the front page of the August 2023 paper. My intention was for the September 1st paper, it was going to be Kelly Frazier, but it wasn't really as juicy of a story. She held signs for Brian. Debo Brown was out there holding signs for Brian. So
Social
they weren't.
Media.
They were helping but they weren't his campaign manager. So I thought the big story was the campaign manager. And I was getting ready, and I was working on a story for the September edition about Kelly Frazier. And then what happened on August 28th of 2023, Tom ended up in a coma.
Yes.
So 3 days before we went to print, I went down. I was in a hospital. And I was in a coma for 11 days. I was at Lawrence General for 34 days. And that's another whole show. If you want to go back and watch that, you can Google it. And then from there I went to Hannah Dustin Rehab for 2 weeks. And the day before I got discharged in October, now remember, I went into the hospital August 28th. By mid-October, when they were getting ready to send me home, an oncologist shows up in my hospital room and says, we got bad news. We found lung cancer in your upper right lung. And so you're going to go home for a day, and then we're going to have either a van pick you up or you're going to have to get a ride to Dana-Farber, and we want to start immediately treating you because it's very young. The cells are very young. We think we can get it all.
Okay.
So that was mid-October, right? So I was down all of October, most of November. We did put out papers, but I was doing it from my laptop in waiting rooms at Dana-Farber, at Brigham and Women's in Boston. And why am I saying all this? Because that Kelly Frazier story never got to get written because I was dealing with personal issues.
Yeah. Health. Yeah.
And even though we were putting papers out, I wasn't doing investigations and calling people and going to interview people. I was basically putting together other people's stories to fill a newspaper until I could adequately go back to doing my job full time. So we got the call on the 19th of December now. Now we've gone from...
That's my birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So from August 28th to December 19th, on December 19th, the Wednesday before Christmas, 2023, I get a phone call from Dr. Majit at Boston, at Brigham and Women's in Boston, who said, you are now cancer-free.
Nice.
Knock on wood, right?
On my birthday?
Yeah, on your birthday.
Oh, we were meant to be friends.
Right? So we had a great Christmas at my mom's house. God bless my mom. God bless Uncle Frankie. Everybody's still healthy. And we had a great Christmas because it's a Christmas that I probably should not have ever lived to see. And then January comes around and I'm working on the bash. So I'm thinking, okay, I almost died. This is going to be a great bash because I never thought we'd have another bash. So I'm working on the bash through January. And in February, a city council called me and said, hey, Tom, I know you've been a little busy, to understatement. Mm-hmm. But do you ever plan on doing the second half of that story about the ARPA grants? Because it was a great story that you wrote about Lynette, but Lynette wasn't the only one involved. Do you plan on doing the other story? And I said, well, now that I'm starting to feel better, I will. So I started investigating the end of January, took me through most of February. Again, while I'm working on the bash, I'm also now working on this. Okay. And the last week of February of 2024, I was ready to post my story. I wrote the story. I had all the documents that I needed. I had all the photos that I needed. And I always do this preview because you want to let people know something's coming so more people are watching.
Yeah.
People are refreshing them. Right, yeah. You want to market your story as a reporter. So I posted, coming tomorrow. Lawrence's homeless coordinator, Kelly Birchall Frazier, caught trying to steer $200,000 of federal money to her own nonprofit. And I knew that Debo and Kelly would flip out because their skin is so thin that they can never let any... If you cut them off in line at Dunkin' Donuts 34 years ago, they still remember it, and they're still out to get you. No, I'm not joking. That's not an exaggeration. They still remember that you did that, and they're still out to get you because their ego is so fragile that anything that you say about them at all, every little thing has to be answered, every little thing. So I knew that they were going to flip out a little bit, but I also knew I've got a First Amendment right, and we have the documents. We have her signature on the documents. And $200,000 for her little nonprofit called IVCS, International Veterans Care Services, which, by the way, is not international. They service Lawrence and Methuen.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not international. They're not in Japan. Like, there's no...
It's not even
there's no
by
Kelly,
county.
Yeah,
There's
no Kelly Frazier office in Uzbekistan, right?
Okay.
It's Lawrence and Methuen. But like I said, with these people, everything they do is a grift. Everything's a lie. Even the name of their nonprofit isn't real because it's called International Veterans Care Services, not really international, okay? So I write the story. I'm ready to post the story the next day. I do my little preview. I put up on my Google AdSense because I know we're going to make a lot of money on this. Because there's a lot of people out there that really hate Kelly. I did not realize going into this how many people hate Kelly and Debo. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. Look, I know that there's a lot of people who hate me, and I get it. I understand why. I'm in a business where I could have written a story about your stepfather or your cousin doing something bad, stabbing somebody. I could have written a crime story about them shooting somebody, and you still hate me because you blame me for writing the story. I get that. I also get that I have a very caustic personality, and I'm not for everybody. I get that too. Yeah. But I had no idea how many people hate Kelly and Debo. Like, I had no clue.
They cross a lot of people.
Well, they're bullies, and the story you're going to get today is not. I'm not going to drag out. I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of the background than most people get. So I post that preview of tomorrow's story, and within 2 hours, a knock on my door by a North Andover cop, and I'm thinking, I'm working on the bash. He's here to deliver a check for Chuck Gray, who's the police chief here in North Andover. Chuck's a good friend of mine. He's been to the bash several times. He's won the Officer Tom Duggan Hero Police Officer Award, I think, once, maybe twice. So I'm thinking he's just here to drop off a check for the chief. Mm-hmm. I open the door, there he is. I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? I hope you keep it safe today. And he says, Mr. Duggan, I've got a stalking order for you. So now I'm thinking he's joking. Like Chuck said him here to prank me. No, he wasn't joking. Crybaby Kelly Frazier saw my preview of my story on Facebook. Because she lives in Salem, New Hampshire, not Lawrence. She's always coming to Lawrence to tell you how to live your life. She lives in Salem. Because she lives in Salem, New Hampshire, she went to a Salem, New Hampshire judge, found something that I had posted online like 6 months earlier, likening my conflict with her husband to the Gaza war. Mm-hmm. So basically what I said was, I posted a picture online of Debo at my bash, kissing my neck. It's one of the funniest pictures ever. And a friend of his, Hannah El Khoury, comes on and says, listen, I love him and I love you. I wish you guys could hug it out. Peace is better than war. That's what he wrote. He said, peace is better than war. So I used a war analogy. Okay. Because it's very clear that Debo and Kelly and I have been at war on Facebook. It's been a Facebook war for the last 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. They go on, they call me a thief, they call me all kinds, they just make shit up like they do with everybody. They just make stuff up.
Anyone that you interact with, they write.
Right. Anybody that likes any of my stories, they call them on the phone and intimidate them. So that war did exist. It has existed. It's been a Facebook war for a number of years. And Hannah comes on and says, listen, peace is better than war. I wish you guys could hug it out. I like him. I like you. So I said, and I'm not going to give you word for word, but here's basically what I said. I said, and I've heard it repeated in court so many times now, I probably am doing it word for word. I said, let me put it this way. This guy has come to me and shaken my hand and apologized 100 times. And every time I accept his apology, as soon as he thinks that I've really accepted his apology, he sees it as a sign of weakness and he attacks me again. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no more ceasefires. This is going to be like Israel and the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. The Palestinians shoot rockets into Israel every day, and Israel ignores them every day, and then eventually Israel's had enough of their shit. Mm-hmm. And eventually Israel starts to line their tanks up on the border, and this is what I said, and every time they see Israel start to respond, they ask for a ceasefire. Yeah. And Debo's no different.
For mercy.
He attacks and he attacks and he attacks, and then the minute he sees that I'm about to come back at him, he hides behind the skirt of his wife, Kelly. That's what I said. He hides behind Kelly, which, by the way, is exactly what just happened, right? That's exactly what he just did. So Kelly found that story, that post online, and put it in a stalking order saying that it made her in fear of her life. Have you guys met Kelly Birchall Frazier? Have you seen the way she behaves in public? You think that woman's really afraid of anything? Anybody? Go to the Valley Patriot website, valleypatriot.com. In the little search bar up at the top, type in Frazier, Frazier, and pull up the video that we have of her losing her shit at the TMF family dinner for the homeless because somebody dared to challenge her. She went on for a full 8 minutes yelling and screaming and swearing and threatening this person. Once you have exhibited the poor behavior of the uneducated crybaby Kelly Frazier, you understand that this woman's not in fear of her life about anything. But see, the judge doesn't know that, and the courts don't know that.
Yeah. What
they see is some poor woman who's claiming she's in fear of her life over something that was posted on Facebook, and they give her a temporary restraining order. So this cop is standing outside my office handing me a restraining order, and he points to the first box on page 2. There's like a checkbox on what it is that the court's telling you you're not allowed to do. You can't get within 1,000 feet of her. You can't contact her. You can't call her. And the first box at the top says, cannot publish anything about the victim. The victim. She's the victim of my stalking now, right? In the eyes of the court, she's a victim of my stalking with no real evidence.
As a reporter.
As a reporter. So this stalking order was obviously to stop me from publishing the next day my story about her trying to get $200,000 for her International Veterans Care Services so-called nonprofit from the federal government through the city of Lawrence that she works for. So now I can't publish anything about her. I've got to pull my story. Not only do I have to pull my story from what I was going to post online, I now have to pull it out of the paper because the newspaper was set to go to print in 2 days.
Okay.
So I was going to preview the story online, then put it in the next paper, and now I have to pull it. I have to wait 10 days for a hearing to stand in front of a judge and go, Your Honor, do I have tanks? I said, I'm going to put tanks on the board. Do I actually have tanks? So I knew we were going to win, and she knew we were going to win. So she doesn't show up at court. I show up at court. She does not show up at court. The judge throws it out because she defaulted. That means she didn't show up. She's the moving party. She's the plaintiff. She didn't show up, so they threw it out. Mm-hmm. She goes back 3 hours later and begs the judge to reconsider and says, well, I was at Staples. I didn't know I had to bring copies of things, and I was getting my evidence, and I wasn't ready. And the judge said, no. You were supposed to be here. You knew what time you were supposed to be here. And he dismissed her second chance to have this reinstated. So now I'm free man for a whole day. I'm a free man. Mm-hmm. So I go home and I wrote a story about her stalking order and published her stalking order and all the things that we can prove she lied about in the stalking order and how it was dismissed and how she tried to use it to stop my story of her trying to get $200,000 for her own nonprofit. Coming tomorrow, I said, finally, is the story of Kelly Frazier trying to get $200,000 from the city of Lawrence through an ARPA grant that goes through her office. In under 4 hours, another knock at my door.
Oh, God.
So I opened the door and I said to the cop, it was the same cop. I said to the cop, I said, hey, you're here to bring back my gun. Because when they gave me the first order, they take your gun, they take your gun license, which is unconstitutional and anti-constitutional. But until the Supreme Court actually overturns these ridiculous laws that punish you, even though you haven't been convicted of anything, they took my gun, they took my gun. So the next day when we win, or 10 days later when we win, because she defaults, I open my door, he's there, I'm like, oh, you're here to give me back my gun. He's like, not exactly. And he hands me another order. She went back to court and filed the exact same allegations that were now dismissed twice. Why Judge Zano, who was probably the most horrible judge I've been in a lot of courtrooms. I've been sued a lot. I've been sued no less than a dozen times. I've never lost. I've been in front of a lot of judges. I've never seen a judge this incompetent in my life, ever. He allows her to do a third ruling, a third stalking order. So follow the progression. She files a stalking order. It's a temporary order. I wait 10 days. I'm at risk of going to jail everywhere I go if I'm within 1,000 feet of her, even though I haven't been convicted of anything, and I've lost my gun. And her and her mother, Sharon Birchall from the Airport Commission, is all over Facebook saying they took his gun, prodding people to come after me, letting them know that I can't defend myself.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't show up in court, and I write a story about what she tried to do, and they served me with another order with all the exact same facts. So Judge Zano allowed a third filing on the exact same facts that had been thrown out the first two times. So now I have to wait another 10 days for a hearing, and everywhere I go, Kelly and Debo are walking in. So I'm at Salvatore's having dinner, and I check in on my Facebook. I'm at Salvatore. I see a picture of my wonderful food, and I look up 5 minutes later, and there's Kelly and Debo walking in, already on the phone with the cops. He's 1,000 feet. He's near 1,000 feet. We need him locked up. So everywhere I went, I had to not check in. Everywhere I couldn't go to political functions because they would show up, right? So there was an election going on. There's nothing I could do. They went to every fundraiser, every rally to make sure. They went to every city council meeting, so I couldn't go to the city council meeting and do my job. And I wait for another hearing. And the Friday before the next hearing, which is supposed to be on a Monday, Kelly's lawyer calls the court and says she had a stroke. She's at Lawrence General, and she's lost her sight, and she had a stroke. So I actually said a prayer for her. As much as I don't like her, as much as I don't like what she's doing, the last thing in the world I want anyone, especially after what I'd been through, last thing in the world I want anyone, no matter who they are, is to go through what I went through. So I said a prayer for her, and I felt bad, but I'm like, okay, but at least, like, she had a stroke, and she's not making something up, and I hope she's going to be okay, but if I got to wait another 30 days or whatever, I guess that's fine. At least I don't have to worry about running into her. She's in the hospital. I can go to Salvatore's now and I don't have to worry about it. That was on a Friday in March. The next day I go on Facebook, and there she is riding a motorcycle with Debo through Salem, New Hampshire, talking about what a peaceful weekend she's having and how all of her stress is gone. Yeah, because you lied to get out of your hearing on Monday that you knew you were going to lose. So I'm furious. But what can I do? There's nothing I can do. She's a liar. She's a con artist. And her convicted criminal husband, Donald Frazier, a.k.a. Debo Brown, is also a con artist and a criminal. And I'm sitting here watching this going, my God, I was praying for her. Like, I actually felt bad thinking she had a stroke, and I'm thinking about, like, what I went through and when I was in the hospital. And I wouldn't, on my father's soul, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, no matter who it is. I don't care who it is. Even Debo, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. What I went through in the hospital was hell. And I couldn't even imagine her going through that. And now I'm watching her laugh while she's riding around on a motorcycle through Salem, New Hampshire, talking about how peaceful her friggin' weekend is. And now I'm just furious. And I'm sitting there going, maybe can I call the judge and tell him, like, Monday morning we're supposed to have a hearing? She's right. I called the court. There's nothing I can do.
Nothing.
There's nothing I can do. She's the victim. Remember, she's the victim. This is the way these laws are written. So, okay, fine. I wait 30 days for a hearing. And my hearing is supposed to be April now 22nd. So now we've gone from the last week of February. This restraining order, this stalking order has been in effect. She said I was stalking her. Mind you, I've blocked her on Facebook 6 months earlier. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how I'm stalking her when I took adequate measures to block her from communicating with me. I blocked her on my phone. I blocked her on Facebook. So April 22nd is on a Monday again. Is supposed to be our next hearing. I have to go out and I have to spend $10,000 on lawyers because I'm not fooling around with this stuff. And the Saturday before the Monday hearing, I get invited to a engagement party at St. Andrew's Church in Methuen. And a good friend of mine's daughter is getting married. He invites me to the engagement party. I said, listen, I haven't been feeling well. If I feel good enough, I'll go. And I felt good that day. It was a Saturday, so I went. While we're sitting there, we're doing selfies. I'm checking myself in. I said, listen, you would never invite Kelly or Debo to this. He's like, no, I can't stand her. I'm like, good. So I checked myself in knowing she's not going to come in. Yeah. It's a private party. It's at a church. We're fine. That night at 1:30 in the morning, I get a knock on my door right here on Main Street. And it's 2 Methuen police officers and a North Andover police officer. I'm like, wow, what the hell? I thought maybe somebody like beat her up and they're going to blame me for it. Like, what the hell are these guys doing here? Mr. Duggan, where were you today? I said, the only place I went to the post office and I went to an engagement party. Well, where was that? It was at St. Andrew's Church in Methuen. Are you aware that Kelly Birchall Frazier owns that building? By the way, this is all on body cam. Don't try to deny it, okay? Don't try to deny it, Debo and Kelly. I got it on body cam. Officer Young and Officer Phelan from Methuen stood in front and on body cam interviewed me outside at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, asking me where I was, and they said, Kelly Birchall Frazier owns that building. And even though she wasn't there when you were at that party, technically it's a violation of the stalking order. You're under arrest.
Wow.
And they arrested me, handcuffed me, put me in the car, brought me to the station, booked me, and the whole time they're saying, don't worry, Tom, you'll be home in an hour. It wasn't until I was in the cell and they were closing the door that they went, oh, yeah, sorry, there's no bail for violating a restraining order or a stalking order. And I kept saying, wait a minute, if this was New Hampshire, it would be a civil matter. Mm-hmm. If I violated the order in New Hampshire, it would be a civil matter. I would get a notification and I would go before the judge. I wouldn't be arrested. Why are you arresting me? Well, we don't really have stalking orders in Massachusetts. Everything comes under 209A in Massachusetts. And under 209A, you don't get bail. So I sat in a jail cell for 2 days. And they brought me into court Monday morning, the day of my hearing. My hearing is supposed to be Monday, right? Monday morning, they bring me into court, Lawrence District Court, call my name out as a stalker in open court. In shackles, hands and feet, like I was a serial killer. Okay? So I'm shuffling in my shackles. And thank God, my lawyer, Bob Lewin from Andover, an amazing lawyer, had worked out a deal with the DA that they were going to release me on my own recognizance because everyone knows who I am. And I don't have the ability to flee. I barely had the ability to get up the stairs to get here today, right? So they let me out on bail. I go home, take a shower, and go right to Salem, New Hampshire for our hearing on the restraining order. Because now I'm finally getting my day in court to say to a judge, I don't own tanks. How could she take this as a threat? What she's claiming as a threat is me saying I'm lining my tanks on the border and I'm going to roll into Gaza. There's going to be no more ceasefire. I'm done with Debo and I'm done with Kelly and I'm done with all their attacks, which happened 6 months before I posted my breaking story was coming up. And we walk into court and Kelly says to the judge, first thing out of her mouth is, actually I think it was her lawyer, said, Your Honor, he just spent the weekend in jail for violating your order. And the judge didn't listen to a goddamn thing we said after that moment. From that moment on, everything she said was gospel, and everything we said was full of crap. And
this is the same judge?
Same judge. So she gets up there, and she just spins these lies that she's afraid for her life, and people are calling her and hanging up and threatening her, and people are following her, and people are taking pictures of her and sending it to me and saying, here's where she is today. And then the judge comes to me and I said, Your Honor, I never threatened her. This is about a story that I'm writing about her. She tried to get $200,000 in federal money. I'm a reporter. She's not my girlfriend. She's not my ex-girlfriend. She's not my roommate. I have no stalking orders are for people that you have a relationship with or someone who's actually stalking you. So the judge says to me, Mr. Duggan, have you ever been to her home? No. Have you ever been to her job? Nope. Have you ever been to her city hall office? Nope. Have you ever been in her car? Nope. Do you know what kind of car she drives? Nope. I've never been in her house, in her car, in her office at City Hall, which wasn't in City Hall, I found out later on. It was somewhere else on Merrimack Street. I'd never been to her nonprofit. I'd never been to any of her offices. I'd never been to her Beauty and Bling Spa, which was closed down by the state. I had never been to any of those things. So I said to the judge, and my lawyer said to the judge, Your Honor, how can you find this guy guilty of stalking? He's never been anywhere near her unless she approaches him at TMF. He's a member of TMF. They feed the homeless on Wednesday nights, and she shows up at his events. So how is he stalking her? We walked out of there thinking, how do we lose this? I don't own tanks. How is that a threat? The judge didn't care. The only thing the judge, Zano from Salem, New Hampshire, cared about was the fact that I had supposedly violated his order over the weekend. So he extends the order, which gives me a permanent criminal record. I never get my gun back, and I never get my gun license back because Massachusetts, never going to happen. And by the way, now I'm up on criminal charges for violating the order after spending a weekend in jail because supposedly she owns that building. And I kept saying to the cops when they were arresting me, it's a church. How does she own a church? And they didn't care. It's mandatory. We think you might have, maybe, kind of. You've got a penis. She doesn't. The law says we're going to take you. And that's basically what they said without saying it as crudely as I just did. So in July, now remember this started in February. In July 29th, my trial starts on a Monday. It's a 3-day trial. And she gets up and she lies. She says that there's signs outside the church that say she's got an office there. She doesn't. The 2 officers get up and testify that she claims she owned the building. She got up and claimed she never told the cops that. But he should have known because there's a sign out there that says IVCS, and he knows that's the name of my lawyer pulled out pictures of the building and said, please point out where the signs are. There were no signs. She goes, yeah, but my van was in the back and it had decals all over it that said IVCS. So he still should have known that I have an office in that building. And he pulled out a picture of the van and said, is this your van? Yes, that's my van. Can you please show the jury where the stickers are? Because I don't see any decals. And, of course, there weren't any. And then he says to her, did you tell the police that you owned the building? No, I never told them. The good thing about criminal trials is the witnesses can't hear what other witnesses testify to. They have to be out of the room.
Oh, really? Okay.
So when the 2 officers from Methuen, who were on her side, who arrested me, got up and said, yes, she said she owned the building. And my lawyer said, well, is that why you arrested my client? Because she said she owned the building? Well, yeah. Did you ever check to see if she actually owned the building? No. No, we never checked. Never checked. So she lied about owning the building. She lied about a sign being outside. She lied about decals being on her car. And why? To put me in prison. I was facing 2.5 years in prison. To put me in prison for daring to write a story about her trying to get $200,000 for her nonprofit. Now, let me ask you guys this, just knowing what you know up to this point. Does that sound like somebody that thought she was doing a good thing? Does that sound like somebody who thinks her trying to get the $200,000 was legal? That it was why would she go through all of this to stop me from writing that story if her getting $200,000 was on the up and up? If it was legal, if it was okay, it wasn't legal and it wasn't okay. It was the mayor's office that took her name off the list because it was a conflict of interest. And that's not Tom Duggan saying that. That's Octavian Spanner from the mayor's office telling the city council that at an open meeting on July 28th of 2023. So it's not Tom Duggan making the accusation. It's Tom Duggan reporting on the city pulling her application because the city said it was a conflict of interest. But these people couldn't have that. God forbid someone writes a negative story about Crybaby Kelly. She might cry, after all. And you can't have Dimebag Debo out there attacking people all the time when there's this negative story sitting out there about his wife that his enemies can throw in his face when he starts acting like the hood booger that he is. So I get found not guilty by a jury in 15 minutes after a 3-day trial. And it was a tough trial, by the way, which cost me a lot of money. It cost me over $10,000 to pay a lawyer to defend myself. I get found not guilty. And now Kelly and Debo are so furious that they're posting on Facebook that I'm a pedophile, that I'm a sex offender, and their mother, Sharon Birchall, who used to sleep with the chief of Lawrence, which is why she never went to jail when she was involved in that insurance scam, when she was staging accidents for insurance fraud money, because her mother was sleeping with the chief. That's why, by the way. Where was I?
So now you won the case.
I won the case. But that was my criminal case. I still have
a stalking order.
A stalking order. And they're on Facebook posting that I'm a sex offender and he has no gun. They took his gun. Mm-hmm. Okay? Prodding people in the community who might be homeless, who might be, maybe they're psychologically damaged, maybe there's somebody out there who's not homeless, who just hates pedophiles, prodding them, he has no gun, he's got no protection, basically prodding them to come after me. That's what they did. They went after my mom. They went after my family. They went after my business. They posted a story on Facebook about me and Diana DiZoglio saying that she was corrupt because she refused to audit the Valley Patriot. Because they're so stupid that they don't realize that the state auditor audits state agencies and not private businesses. But they still had no problem slandering Diana DeZoglio, just like they had no problem slandering Mike Gorman at TMF and attacking Mike Gorman and calling him all kinds of names and accusing him of all kinds of stuff that I'm not even going to go into because it's not fair to him.
And this is all over a story that would have been posted and just everybody would have forgotten about.
What a great point, intern girl, for the win.
Thank you.
What a great point. If Kelly, that's the story right there that we originally did printing. Okay. Imagine if Kelly and Debo were not the hood boogers that they are. Imagine if they were not the fraudsters that they are. And they did what Lynette Perez did. Because anybody talking about Lynette Perez today? Nobody's talking about Lynette.
I didn't even know about this until you mentioned it.
Right. Nobody remembers because it was a one-day story that everybody talked about for a day. And then everybody moved on to the next story and forgot all about it.
Yesterday's paper.
She hasn't, by the way, forgotten about it. She won't say hi to me anymore, which I'm not being sarcastic when I say that hurts because I actually like her. And I was just doing my job. And I really wish she wouldn't take it personally. Listen, if Milagros Dominguez can say hi to me and give me a hug after all the shit I've written about her and all of her arrests and all of her issues legally, then certainly Lynette Perez could say hi. So it does bother me that she won't say hi to me. However, that's fine. I recognize that comes with the job. But if Kelly and Debo had just shut the F up,
let it go.
Let me write my story, it would have been forgotten about the next day. Yeah, it would be there when people Google your name. But so would all the other stories when they Googled Kelly Birchall Frazier's name, that all the ass-kissing she took from Methuen Life and the ass-kissing she took from Rumbo, and she's out there helping veterans. And by the way, in full disclosure, she does do some good things in the community. I'm not going to say she doesn't. That would just be a lie, all right? She does do good things in the community. There are some things that she has done. Now, I'm not going to say she did it for the right reasons and her motivation was she does it to pat herself on the back. And but you can't take away the fact that she does do some good in the community. And so had she shut the F up, had Debo shut the F up, 5 years from now when people Google their name, that story will come up, but so will all the other stuff that they've done in the community.
That is great.
And my story would be in balance. People would see the good thing that they do and the bad thing that they did. And I don't think anybody would hold it against them. They go, oh, this is 5 years ago. This is 10 years ago. Nobody would care. Debo, nobody would have cared had you shut the F up. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't let one little thing go. They couldn't let anything go. They have to answer every slight. They remember the day that you cut them off in line at Dunkin' Donuts when they were 15. They remember that, and they're still holding on to it because their egos are so fragile, and they're not very intelligent. They're not smart enough to walk away and take a win or take a minor loss and walk away for a bigger win later on. So I had to hire another lawyer, $20,000 this time, to file an appeal with the New Hampshire Supreme Court. And the argument that we basically made, how are we doing on time, by the way?
We have 15 more minutes.
Okay. So we appealed. So I hired a lawyer named Gregory Sullivan from Malloy and Sullivan in Hingham. He is, by the way, the general counsel for the Manchester Union Leader. This is a guy that has argued before the Supreme Court on First Amendment cases in the past and has won. I'm not going to say he's never lost a case, but I read through some of his previous cases. I couldn't find a loss. I'm sure he has. Every lawyer's lost a case.
Yeah. How do they measure that? Like by percentages or something?
Well, you look at so if let's say he brought 8 First Amendment cases in the New Hampshire Supreme Court, how many did he win?
Yeah, so like.
So did he win 7? Did he win all 8?
Okay.
So I couldn't find a loss. I found a bunch of wins, and he was a great First Amendment lawyer. And because I knew he worked for the Manchester Union Leader, and was friends with Peter Caruso, my other lawyer. I have so many lawyers at this point. Just call the Valley Patriot the Lawyers Weekly at this point.
I think I need an attorney. I'm going to talk to you about that.
Right? I've spent so much money on lawyers. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how much money I've spent on lawyers. So I spent $20,000.
They're important, though.
Well, listen, I got my gun license back. I got my gun back. Everything's been expunged. We go before the Supreme Court, and my lawyer made the same argument that my previous lawyer, Peter Caruso, made in front of Judge Zano. And basically said this: Mr. Duggan doesn't own any tanks. in this New Hampshire state statute on stalking, it has to be an overt threat. It can't be like, oh, I could kill that guy. It has to be specific, and it has to be serious, and it has to be, the word they use is overt, which means it can't be abstract. It can't be, let me put it this way, I'm Israel and he's the Palestinians, or he's Hamas. And at a time and place of my choosing, I'm going to line my tanks up on the border, and when I'm ready, I'm going to roll my tanks in. The other thing that she said that was thrown out by the court was she claimed that I said, he fired the first shot and I'm going to fire the last shot and I've got a gun. That literally just never happened. She lied. That literally never happened. She also made up a bunch of other stuff. Debo did a video, went online, and gave up my home address. In her filing, she claimed I went on my podcast and gave out her home address. Everything they had done to me, they put in writing, a fraud before the court, they put in writing that I did that to them, that I accused them of this, I accused them of that, I gave out their home phone number, and it was all the same shit that they had just done to me.
Over a story.
Over a story. So my lawyer argued that it has to be an overt threat, and this was not an overt threat. And by the way, Your Honors, they took his gun. They took his gun license. And everywhere he goes, they show up trying to get him violated to put in jail. Because remember, on the first time I was tried for being at the church that she doesn't own, by the way, I was facing 2.5 years in prison. That's 2.5 years of my life gone. That's the end of the Valley Patriot. Mm-hmm. That means the bash is over. No more bash. No more scholarships for kids. No more
Businesses
TMF.
Are
no
not
more.
Getting marketed.
I'm done. My reputation is done, and I'm done. I'll never pass a Corey check ever again. I'll never be able to go to a high school graduation because they happen on school property. Mm-hmm. My life was over if I lost that trial. Yeah. And there they were again. My cousin, Ian Taylor, was a Billerica police officer who was tragically killed last year. He was at a construction site doing a detail, and a backhoe backed up on him and killed him.
Oh, my goodness.
I went out and I rented a suit. My cousins Lisa and Wayne, I love them to death, his parents. I felt so bad. I wanted to be there for them. I actually went out and rented a suit, and Santiago, one of the people who own stock in the Valley Patriot, called me from the wake and said, you better stay home. They're sitting in the front row waiting for you to show up. So they didn't know my cousin Ian.
But they went to the wake.
But they knew he was my cousin because I posted on Facebook when it happened, my condolences to my cousins Lisa and Wayne that my cousin, Ian has passed away. And they knew that this guy was related to me. So they went to my family's wake and funeral so I couldn't go. And if I showed up, they were going to have me arrested at my cousin's wake and funeral. This is how scummy these people are.
Unbelievable.
This is how scummy these people are. Criminals is what they are. They're criminals. And don't tell me, somebody emailed me the other day saying you should be careful calling them criminals because Kelly was never charged for insurance fraud. Let me ask you guys this before I move on. Let me ask you this. If you rob a bank and the feds come to you and they say, listen, Carlotta, we know you robbed the bank, but if you tell us who in the bank gave you the bank code to get in, we won't charge you. And you do. And you testify against that person, and you become a narc. You become a snitch. Mm-hmm. And you snitch on the people that helped you plan the bank robbery. And you don't get charged, and you don't go to jail. Let me ask you this question. Are you still a bank robber?
Oh, yes.
Damn fucking right you are. Damn right you are. So don't tell me she's not a criminal. You can't say that because she was never charged. She still did it. And she still testified that she did it. Her and Debo were staging car accidents in Lawrence for insurance money. Remember the woman that died? There was a big story about a woman who died doing exactly that. She was in a car that they were staging accidents.
Here in Lawrence?
It was in Lawrence, okay. Right? That's what they were doing. They were involved in staging accidents, loading up cars, 2 or 3 cars at a time, staging an accident in a corner, and then everybody files for insurance.
And gets money.
And Kelly got caught because she's incompetent at everything she does. And she gets caught. And they go to her, and by the way, this is not the first time this has happened either, as far as them going to her and saying, testify, and we won't charge you. She was involved in a mortgage situation at a company she worked at, and they did the same thing. We won't charge you if you testify. So she has ratted on a number of people to keep herself out of jail. You know who she ratted on? You know what name she gave to the prosecutors so that she could stay out of jail? Debo. She ratted on her own. He wasn't her husband at the time. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah, she gave Debo's name. That's the guy that he's continually defending, the woman who turned him in. And then she testified against him and others. So these people are fraudsters. And how she got a job working for the city of Lawrence, beyond me. How he got a job working at the city of Lawrence is beyond me.
Don't they Corey and sorry you?
They're supposed to.
Okay, because I worked for the city of Lawrence, well, as a paraprofessional for a school, and I remember getting like drug tested. I got Corey, I got sorry, I got everything, even fingerprints too. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we argued before the New Hampshire Supreme Court, and on February 28th, they ruled that Judge Zano had made an egregious error of law, which he did, and they spent much more time talking about Judge Zano's bad ruling, illegal ruling, than they did Kelly. But there is one thing they did say about Crybaby Kelly. They said no reasonable person could look at that post on Facebook and consider it a personal threat to their safety. No reasonable person. I think that's a perfect encapsulation of what Crybaby Kelly Frazier is. Not a reasonable person. Randy Carter said to me not long ago, you know, when you posted that preview that you were going to write the story about her, if they had just picked up the phone and called you, am I wrong about this? If they had picked up the phone and just called you and had a conversation with you, you probably wouldn't have published the story, would you? And I said, well, I have to remove all the hatred and anger that I have now for what they've done and go back to that time in my head and say, yeah, if Debo and Kelly had called me and said, let me explain to you why we did this.
Or say I didn't know. Or,
right.
You know,
I made a compelling reason why I shouldn't write the story, or maybe I could give their side of the story in the story. They want to call us and say, listen, we know you're writing this story for tomorrow. Can we give our side of the story to balance the story? I would have 100% been happy to do that. 100%. But see, Debo did a video about 3 months ago. And my lawyers have everything. Even though they post videos and they take them down, they post things about me being a pedophile, they take it down. We have screen captions of everything. We've downloaded everything. The civil, this is not even going to get to a jury when we file our civil suit. It's not even going to get to a jury. Debo did this video where he comes out and he's in his truck. And he's got his little safety vest on because he's so important. And he's like, oh, what's good? What's happening? What's cracking? What's popping? All this homie bull crap. And then he says, you know, with this Tom's Dugans, with this little TJ, that's the other thing. They've supposedly had some story about me when I was a child, but they just made it up. Or they got it from somebody else who made it up. He's like, little TJ. That's what my mom called me growing up. Like somehow that, she still calls me that. Why would I care? So anyways, he goes, you know, everybody, we tried everything with this Tom's Dugans, and we tried everything, man. We tried leaving him alone. We tried going to court. We tried going the legal route. We've tried everything. And this guy just won't stop. He just won't stop. And ever since he made that video, I've been wanting to say this. I'm going to say it now. I only wish I could have called him on the phone and said it to him. I'm going to say it now. Debo, you're right. You tried everything. Well, actually, no, not everything. You didn't try being just a normal human being and picking up the fucking phone. How about pick up the phone? How about find me? Don't come over to me at TMF and threaten me and say, which he did, your father got what he deserved. If you don't stop running your mouth, you're going to get what he got. My father was murdered by a guy who beat him with a baseball bat, so it was an exact threat. I didn't, by the way, run to the police and go, he threatened me. I'm in fear of my life, like Crybaby Kelly did. I sucked it up because I know he's full of shit. He's not capable. If he was, he wouldn't be hiding behind his wife and filing restraining orders to try and get me to shut up. But you know what, Debo? You didn't try everything. You didn't do what most normal good people would do and try to de-escalate the situation. You didn't call me on the phone and say, can we give our side of the story? You didn't shut the F up. You could have restrained yourself from calling me a sex offender when you knew that was a lie, when you slandered me and you knew that was a lie. You could have done a lot of things. You could have reached out through a third party and said, hey, can we mitigate this? Can we make this go away? You didn't do any of that. That's what a normal person, a good person would try to do. But you didn't try that. You didn't try shutting up. You didn't try to make it better. You didn't try to reach out. You didn't try to communicate. What you did was you went on the attack like you always do, hiding behind your wife, hiding behind Kelly Birchall, the crybaby, who went into court and literally cried in front of Judge Zano, I'm in fear of my life. He said, takes, I tell you, takes. And she wasn't in fear of her life. She was covering for dimebag Debo Brown, Donald Frazier, who attacked my dad, who attacked my mom.
Who attended your cousin's funeral.
Wouldn't let me attend my cousin's funeral. These people have done, I can't say they've done a lot of damage, actually, because the damage that was done I've been able to now mitigate through bringing them to court and everything else. But certainly it damaged to my reputation. They've gone to every one of my advertisers, tried to get them to not advertise. They walked into Two Guys Smoke Shop. Debo walked into Two Guys Smoke Shop with copies of the stalking order telling them that they should take this show off the air because he's a stalker. Look, here's my legal papers. And thank God he got Mr. Jonathan, who basically told him to go F himself and then said that he would have them arrested for trespassing if they ever came back. But they tried. They went to all of my advertisers. Every time I announced, hey, we want to welcome such and such. There's an organization here in North Andover that advertised with me. And the minute I announced it, and they didn't know me from a hole in the wall, they just wanted to advertise in my newspaper. Debo went and showed up with his little stalking order that he had to try and get them to not advertise with me. And they went, oh, yeah, gee, that's terrible. You know, you're right. Mr. Duggan's terrible. And then they stayed with us. Yeah. Thank God. They went to every advertiser they could. Every person who liked my story on Facebook, they called them, they emailed them. They went to their house and said, why are you liking Tom Duggan's story?
Really?
They called you.
They did. They had someone call me. Can I say who it was?
Yeah, go ahead.
Lenin Roa.
Yep.
They had him call me and kind of, in a way threaten me. By first, he asked me if, how come I'm single, if I have any guy around. And I said, that's such an odd question because our relationship has always been very professional. And then he went off to say, like, why are you going against Debo and Kelly, especially Kelly? And then he just, like, started going off, and I had to tell him off. But, yeah, it was definitely threatening, and I felt unsafe. I had to call my dad and my brother, my cousin who's a police officer to, kind of tell them, like, what's going on. But, yeah, it was very uncalled for. A grown man,
right,
calling me to tell me, why are you single? Why don't you have a man? And then all of a sudden, like, threatening me. So, yeah.
It's disappointing. I'm hoping that that's a misunderstanding. I'm hoping that at some point that you and Lennon can maybe work that out. Because what I hate about all of this is there are a lot of people out there that have taken sides thinking they know what's going on because they believe the other side. They believe the bullshit.
Got it. I mean,
and I think that someone like Lennon, just like Sharon Marie, and a number of other people that took her side because they believe her. She's the victim in every story she tells. By the way, if you know Kelly, you know she's the victim in every story she tells. And she can be convincing. She certainly was convincing to Judge Zano, even though it didn't meet the statute, and it was overturned. And I got my gun license back, and I got my gun back, and my criminal record has been expunged. But what a huge win for us.
Congratulations.
That after a year and a half of dealing with their nonsense, and now I'm waiting on some emails from the city of Lawrence. I've got at least 2 more stories coming.
Okay.
We've got a story about a veteran in Lawrence who just recently passed away, whose daughter has an amazing story about Kelly that we're going to be telling shortly. And I'm going to be filing in civil court.
Okay.
But I'll say one thing. This win is going to give us a really great bash to celebrate this year. We're going to be celebrating our 21st anniversary at the Elks Club in Lawrence, March 28th. We're already up to $44,000 on our scholarships.
Amazing.
Yeah, we had 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't get above 23,000, and I kept saying, "Are we going to make it this year?" It looks like we're at least within striking distance of making our goal this year. The goal is 58,000. We're at 44. So we're about 12,000 away if my Laurentine math serves me correctly. But we're gonna have a lot to celebrate this year. This is now our second Supreme Court win.
Okay.
We've got one Supreme Court win in Massachusetts against Kevin Thompson of Methuen, who sued us and lost and appealed it and lost and appealed it and lost, and then went to the state Supreme Court and, of course, lost. We've never lost a First Amendment case. We've actually never lost any case. The only round I ever lost was in front of Judge Zano, which got overturned by the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So we've got a really good track record.
This is not only like a win, but it's also like to show people that there are ways around things.
Yeah.
You know, like you were smart enough to get an attorney. You were smart enough to know your rights. You were smart enough to have those resources available to you to be able to, you know, clear your name, because there's a lot of people that don't know their rights. They don't know their laws.
Right.
And, you know, something like that will come and they were just like, okay, whatever, I'm done.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
but
well,
you
how,
knew.
how do I beat this? Well,
Exactly.
I think part of that is because I've been under attack so many times. Jim Jajuga, the former mayor of Methuen, sued me, and he went to a multi-million-dollar law firm in Boston, Mintz, Levin and Cohn. And I thought we were never going to make it to a jury because they were going to bankrupt me by lawsuit. So someone could file a lawsuit against you, and if they've got a really high-priced attorney, they're going to send you what are called interrogatories. So they send you a list of questions that you have to answer on the record. You have to sign it. You have to get it certified. So they can ask you 1,000 questions. You have to sit there and you have to answer in detail every single question they ask. They say, we want all your emails going back to 1922, right, before they were even emails. You've got to do a search. You've got to hire somebody to go through, get an IT person, give them all your emails that have this certain phrase in it, and you have to turn over those documents called the production of documents. There's a lot that goes into a lawsuit, and a big high-priced law firm can win without even going to trial by bankrupting you along the way, and that was Jim Jajuga's attempt. He knew he couldn't win if we went before a jury, so he tried to bankrupt me by lawsuit. And thank God, again, for attorney Peter Caruso in Andover, who took my case and didn't charge me. Thank God. Oh. He said, you know what, I'm not going to let this guy bankrupt your newspaper. I know what you said is true. I'm going to represent you. I'm not going to charge you. And he did. Thank God. And we got through that. I was also sued by the Diatomos, a couple of lawyers in Lawrence who were very, very mad that I had broken a story about them getting fired from City Hall. And that lasted 7 years, that lawsuit. Jesus. 7 years, that lawsuit.
But no criminal.
No criminal. Okay. And that's the thing. People have attacked me a million times because I'm in the business that they think that if I say something mean about you, you can sue me even if it's true. You can't. Well, you could try, but you're not going to get anywhere.
First Amendment.
So I've been attacked. Willie Lantigua took me to court. The Diatomos took me to court. Kevin Thompson took me to court. And I've never lost. But never in my 21 years running this newspaper had anybody tried to go the criminal route, to try and file criminal charges to shut up a reporter. And the reason why this had to be overturned by the New Hampshire Supreme Court, it had to. Because if it didn't, any corrupt government employee of any community or any state who finds out that the reporter at the Eagle Tribune is investigating them and following them around and taking their picture can file a stalking order to stop them from investigating their corruption. Yeah. And so this wasn't just a First Amendment free speech issue. This was a First Amendment free press issue. Yes. And shame on the Eagle Tribune for writing. Say it again. Shame on the Eagle Tribune for writing a story when I got arrested, making it look like I beat my wife. They put a paragraph in that story. First of all, it was on the front page of a Wednesday. The day before, 2 people had been shot and murdered in Lawrence. They weren't the front page. Their competitor, Tom Duggan, was the front page. Okay? And in the story, they put something to the effect of, and I should have brought it with me, but I didn't. Something to the effect of, stalking orders are usually taken out when someone sexually abuses a significant other or household member. Wow.
What is that word, sensationalist?
On my worst day, I couldn't screw someone that hard. On my worst day, I couldn't put into a story that someone might be a sexual danger if there's literally no evidence of that. And couch it under, well, these things usually happen when, okay? And then when I was found not guilty by a jury of violating the order, that was on page 9 of a Sunday paper, I think in section B or C. So it was like page B9 or C9, underneath some irrelevant story that had nothing to do with anything. And they made sure that they added into that story, but he still had the restraining order anyway. Like, he was found guilty of violating the order, but he still has that order. Like, they made sure to let everyone know, I'm still a bad guy. Make sure you know that Tom Duggan, maybe he got away with violating this stalking order. Still a stalker, though. where was the Eagle Tribune defending? I'm defending their right as reporters.
Mm-hmm. Did they write anything about your Supreme Court?
Never. Can you imagine if Tom Duggan had lost in the Supreme Court? You think that would have? Yeah, that would have been front page. That would have been front page. But no, nothing. No support from the Eagle Tribune. No support from the Globe, the Lowell Sun. We had one story in the Manchester Union Leader, but because it was a stalking case, my name isn't in the filings, and her name isn't in the filings because it's a stalking case. So the Manchester Union Leader, which I guess is now the New Hampshire Union Leader, did a story about the Gaza thing, but my name's not in it. So if you search my name and look for stories, there's no story exonerating me from that Eagle Tribune story. So yeah, the Tribune wrote a story on page like B9 that Tom Duggan was found not guilty by a jury for violating that evil stalking order, but he still has the order. He's still a stalker. And now that I've won and I've been completely exonerated, and I'm not a stalker, and I'm not dangerous, and they've had to give me my gun license back and give me my gun back and expunged my record, where's the Eagle Tribune saying, hey, you know what, Tom? Thanks for protecting our right of a free press. Let me tell you this, and this is 100% true. I know we're on time. This is 100% true. If the roles were reversed, Jill Hemazinski up at the Tribune, you can't find anybody who hates me more than her. Jill just hates me.
She's not very liked than people in Lawrence anyways.
Well, that's another whole story. Someday we'll do a podcast on that. But Jill hates me, and I think for some good reasons. I've been really mean to her, deservedly so. It's gone back and forth. But if Jill Hemazinski had a corrupt homeless coordinator from the city of Lawrence file a stalking order against her to stop her from writing a story, not only would I have put her on the front page of my paper as a First Amendment hero, I would have filed a friend of the court brief. I would have showed up at her trial. I would have showed up at her hearing before the Supreme Court, and I would have testified as a friend of the court that this was a First Amendment case, and this has nothing to do with stalking or threats or anything else, that she has the right as a reporter to investigate a corrupt government employee. But I did not get that courtesy on the other end. The only member of the press that actually wrote an editorial backing the Valley Patriot was the Boston Broadside, which is it used to be regional. Now they're all over the country. They're a national paper now. Nice. And they're published out of Georgetown. Oh, okay. And they're published by my former good friend, Lonnie Brennan, who used to write for the Valley Patriot. Okay. He left the Valley Patriot. He didn't like the direction I was going in, so he left it. He started his own paper. And it's a great paper, by the way. Pick up the Boston Broadside.
Are you going to be interviewed by him?
I thought I was. He called and left me a message after we won, and then I called him and left him a message, and I haven't heard back from him. All right. But Jeff Katz, who runs a national radio show, Jeff Katz, who used to be in Boston, now he's in D.C., has asked me to come on next week to talk about this First Amendment case. It just would have been nice if the local newspapers put aside and compartmentalize what you think of me as a person. Look at the actual case and say, here's a monthly newspaper out of North Andover, Massachusetts, that just won their second First Amendment case before a Supreme Court. And that's a pretty big story. Regardless of who's involved, whether it's me, it's Joe Smith, it's Sally Smith, regardless of who the person is and what you think of that person, the fact that this had to go before a Supreme Court, the story behind it, and the fact that we just preserved through the Supreme Court the rights of every reporter in the country and your First Amendment rights in this country is pretty huge. And they should have covered it. They should have covered it, and they should have covered it the right way. But they didn't, because they're cowards.
And that's okay. Whatever.
Well, it shows more about them than it does about me.
Exactly.
But I had a little bit more faith in them. Like, I didn't ever really like the Eagle Tribune, but I thought, but they are First Amendment advocates. Now we know they're not. There are people who fight for the First Amendment. I've certainly done that. And then there are people who take advantage of their First Amendment, and they've certainly done that. And then there are people that do both, but they're not one of them. And it's very sad. It's very sad that they are, because they've got the potential. The Eagle Tribune could have had the potential. Imagine if the Eagle Tribune had written a story about my Supreme Court case and then won an award for it. Imagine if they had written a story about my case and they won an award for it. Because they would have. It's a First Amendment case. It's a landmark decision.
This is the reason why everyone's in business and that, our reporter business, right? It's important.
So that's pretty much it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the bash. We ran out of time. We're at $44,000. We're going to come in next week. Is next week the last week before the bash? No, we got 2 weeks. So next week we'll do bash previews, and we'll talk about like political stuff. Big mayor's race going on in Lawrence. I'm going to Manny Gonzalez's fundraiser tonight. Take some pictures, write a story.
Nice.
See what's going on with that.
What time is that? Where is it?
That's tonight at the Elks. If you're watching this Thursday, the 13th of March, it's tonight at the Elks Club, 6 o'clock. Manny Gonzalez. He's a good guy. He's a former hero police officer, Tom Duggan Public Safety Award winner from a previous bash.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
I think he's actually got 2 awards.
Okay.
And I'm inviting him on the show. So maybe next week, maybe what we'll do is next week we'll try and get him on the show.
Okay.
The following week, it will be the Wednesday before the bash.
So we'll focus on that.
We'll focus on that. Then when we come back the following week, we're going to talk about all the fun we had at the bash.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have some great video. You have somebody doing the video?
I have some bad news.
Uh-oh. We don't have somebody doing the video.
I'm going to reach out to someone else. So the person was not very happy about working with you, unfortunately.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Fair
sorry.
enough.
You know how it is.
Listen, I'm an acquired taste. I get that. There are people
I'm so upset, though. I was like, are you serious right now?
Right. Listen, it's what it is.
And
what
he's
it
actually
is.
a kid who got like a scholarship, who got like an opportunity to do something. So I'm like, this really goes with you. So, but whatever. I'm reaching out to someone else.
It's the younger generation.
It is a generation. Yeah. He's a Gen Z.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. And then the following week we'll come back and we'll talk about, we'll do some videos of how much fun we had at the bash.
All right.
And then once the bash is over, we'll file in civil court.
All right.
So that's going to be fun. And then
you
we're
want
going
to thank your sponsors?
All right, let's thank the sponsors. We'll roll up Mel. Where are we here? All right. There's Melvin Taylor. I think he's doing a show next week. All right, let's say thank you to the Zany Pesci Law Office, Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, Marsan & Son Construction, Marsan & Son Construction. I think I missed them coming in. EIS, Investigation and Gun Training, Tomo at Shaken Seafood, AFC Urgent Care, Clear Path for Veterans New England, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, what? Prime Insurance, the Doug Mercurio Law Office, Prime Insurance, Chris's Barbershop, where I'm going tomorrow to get my hair cut before the bash.
Thank you.
Enterprise Bank, which is soon to be Rockland something Trust. W3ON 4-Star Lighting. A free shout out to JG's Ice Cream because I love those guys. Should I trim my beard? Like, is it getting too long, do you think?
No, I kind of like it.
You like it getting fuller?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
All
but
right.
just, clean it up a little bit and stuff. But
all right.
That's cool.
Fair enough. And also a free shout out to our friend, attorney Paul Lambert, who's helping us. It sounds like Melvin Taylor says go home. By the way, and thank you to intern girl.
Aww.
Sounds like Melvin Taylor says go home, so go home already. No disclaimer anymore, huh? We'll have to make one up.